Jana Balaba Giri Baradari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya Stotira Satashi Shrimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya Stotira Satashi Shrimad His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Gauri Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Iti Gopadan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gadang. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 1, Text 34. Apasvidaste Bhagavan Sukhambo. Apasvidaste Bhagavan Sukhambo. Yasatvatam Kamadugo Nirudha. Yasatvatam Kamadugo Nirudha. Yam amanantis, Yam amanantis mahisabdayonim. Yam amanantis mahisabdayonim. Manomayam sattva turiya tattvam. Manomayam sattva turiya tattvam. Apasvidaste Bhagavan Sukhambo. Yasatvatam Kamadugo Nirudha. Yam amanantis mahisabdayonim. Manomayam sattva turiya tattvam. Others?
smahi shabdayonim Yam amananti smahi shabdayonim Manomayam sattvaturiya tattvam Manomayam sattvaturiya tattvam Api spiraste bhagavan sukambho Api spiraste bhagavan sukambho Yasatvatam kamadugo niruddhaha Yasatvatam kamadugo niruddhaha Yam amananti smahi shabdayonim Yam amananti smahi shabdayonim Manomayam sattvaturiya tattvam Manomayam sattvaturiya tattvam Apasvidaste bhagavan sukambho Apasvidaste bhagavan sukambho Yasatvatam kamadugo niruddhaha Yasatvatam kamadugo niruddhaha Yam amananti smahi shabdayonim Manomayam sattvaturiya tattvam.
Anybody else? From the men? Go ahead.
Apasvidaste bhagavan sukambho Apasvidaste bhagavan sukambho Yasatvatam kamadugo niruddhaha Yasatvatam kamadugo niruddhaha Yam amananti smahi shabdayonim Yam amananti smahi shabdayonim Manomayam sattvam turiya sattvatam Manomayam sattvaturiya tattvam.
Vaishnavis.
Apasvidaste bhagavan sukambho Yasatvatam kamadugo niruddhaha Yam amananti smahi shabdayonim Manomayam sattvaturiya tattvam. Apasvidaste bhagavan sukambho Yasatvatam kamadugo niruddhaha Yam amananti smahi shabdayonim Manomayam sattvaturiya tattvam.
Abhi, as also. Svit, whether. Aste, does. Does he. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Sukam, all happiness. Va, of you. Ya, one who. Sattvatam, of the devotees. Kamaduga, source of all desires. Aniruddha, the plenary expansion, Aniruddha. Yam, whom. Amananti, they accept. Sma, from your. He, certainly. Shabdayonim, the cause of the Rig Veda. Manamayam, creator of the mind. Sattva, transcendental. Turiya, the fourth expansion. Tattvam, principle. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. May I inquire whether Aniruddha is doing well? This is, of course, Vidura speaking here. May I inquire whether Aniruddha is doing well? He is the fulfiller of all the desires of the pure devotees and has been considered from yore, means long ago, to be the cause of the Rig Veda, the creator of the mind, the fourth plenary expansion of Vishnu. So I'll read the translation again. May I inquire whether Aniruddha is doing well? He is the fulfiller of all the desires of the pure devotees, and he has been considered from yore to be the cause of the Rig Veda, the creator of the mind, and the fourth plenary expansion of Vishnu. Purport. Adi Chaturbhuja, the original expansions from Baladev are Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. All of them are Vishnu Tattvas, or non-different personalities of Godhead. In the incarnation of Sri Ram, all these expansions appeared for particular pastimes. Lord Ram is the original Vasudev, and his brothers were Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, and they took the forms of Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughna, right? I don't know if that's the correct order, but I don't know which personality corresponds to which expansion there, but those would be who's being referred to here. Aniruddha is also the cause of Mahavishnu, from whose breathing the Rig Veda appeared. All this is nicely explained in the Markandeya Purana. In the incarnation of Lord Krishna, Aniruddha appeared as the son of the Lord. Lord Krishna in Dwarka is the Vasudeva expansion of the original group. The original Lord Krishna never leaves Goloka Vrindavan. All the plenary expansions are one and the same Vishnu Tattva, and there is no difference in their potency. Om Ganat Timanandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamupagadamayam Dadapti Swapadantakam. So I think we could kind of go through this translation and purport point by point to really see what's going on here. Okay, so this is Vidura speaking. He's inquiring, he's asking these questions from Uddhava, correct? At this point. So he's asking him, may I inquire whether Aniruddha is doing well? Okay, so he's concerned to know about Aniruddha. He is the fulfiller of all the desires of the pure devotees. I wonder if that's his exclusive function. In other words, Vidura is saying that that's what Aniruddha does. Is it just Aniruddha that does that? Or is it he's in addition? He's doing that in addition to the... It's not stated, but anyway, that question arises in my mind. He has been considered from yore, long ago, the cause of the Rig Veda. And in the purport, Prabhupada explains how that happens, because Mahavishnu is an expansion of Aniruddha, and from the breathing of Mahavishnu, that's the origin of the Rig Veda. So in that sense, he's the cause of the Rig Veda. He's the creator of the mind. Okay, how do you create the mind? In other words, I guess that was just delegated to him. Ultimately, Krishna is the creator of everything, but Aniruddha, in a sense, is Krishna. So that apparently that specific function or that specific job was delegated to Aniruddha. He's given credit as being the creator of the mind. And also he's the fourth plenary expansion of Vishnu. Means that Aniruddha is from the first quadruple expansion. You know, there's two quadruple expansions. There's Krishna, Balaram. The first quadruple expansion is Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. So he's from the first quadruple expansion. Prabhupada, in the purport, in the very first word, he says Adi Chaturbuja, means the first quadruple expansion. Okay, so that's the translation. So then Prabhupada says in the purport, Adi Chaturbuja, the original expansions from Baladev. So these expansions come from Baladev, the quadruple expansion, and they're Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. Everybody knows the difference between Vasudeva and Vasudeva, right? No. Okay, Vasudeva is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vasudeva is the husband of Devaki, not Devaki, as your Guru Maharaj correctly pronounced yesterday, but for years I was saying Devaki, because in English you tend to emphasize the second syllable there, but no, that's incorrect. It's Devaki. There's one devotee in New Dwarka. Her daughter is named Devaki, and people keep pronouncing her name Devaki, and so she gave her a way to instruct them. She said, just, no, my name is Devaki, it's like give Dave a key. You know, it's an easy way to remember it. Give Dave a key, Devaki. So anyway, so that's the difference between Vasudeva and Vasudeva. So we're talking about Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not Vasudeva, the husband of Devaki. Okay, so it says here, all of them are Vishnu Tattvas, or non-different personalities of Godhead. Okay, so what's going on here? They're non-different personalities of Godhead. What's the need for more than one personality of Godhead anyway? I mean, why are there Vishnu Tattvas? Why is Krishna doing that? Why is he expanding as Baladev, Balaram, and then the quadruple expansion? Then from the Adi Chaturbuja, there's a Narayan expansion, correct? And then from that Narayan expansion, there's another Chaturbuja expansion, another quadruple expansion, and I can't remember what happens after that. Boom, 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 there's more. But so why? What's going on here? Why is Krishna doing all that expanding? Anybody want to? Yeah. Yeah, variety. Ultimately, I guess, the answer I came back with when I asked myself that question this morning in preparing for this class was to enjoy. To enjoy. He's having fun. That's ultimately what Krishna is doing. He's just enjoying. Whatever he does, he's just enjoying. There's nothing that he's got to do. There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Actually, I'll just hang on. I'm just going to. There we go. There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita that kind of partially applies to this, partially explains this. Let me find it. Here it goes. This third chapter, text 22. Nahi partasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam varta eva chikarmani. So this is Krishna speaking, and he says, O son of Prita, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems, to say the least. You might think, well, okay, there's no work prescribed for him within the three planetary systems, but once he gets out of the three planetary systems, there's a lot of things Krishna's got to do. Nope. Nope. He doesn't. He doesn't have to do anything within the three planetary systems. There's no work prescribed for him there. And there's nothing he has to do beyond in the spiritual world either. He's totally free. He's just enjoying. There's nothing that Krishna's got to do, I saw this lady yesterday, a couple of days ago. She was wearing a T-shirt. I don't have to. I'm not gonna. I don't have to. I don't wanna. I don't need to. I'm retired. So Krishna's like eternally retired in the sense that there's nothing, he doesn't have to get up and go to work, and nothing. He's just free to enjoy. Okay, so then it goes on to say, nor am I in want of anything. Well, Krishna's not in want of anything. I don't need to obtain anything. And then in the purport, Prabhupada quotes these two verses from, he just says in the Vedic literatures, and I won't do the Sanskrit. Well, I'll just quickly do the Sanskrit. Tam Ishvaranam Paramam Maheshvam, Tam Devatanam Paramam Chataivadam, Patim Patinam Paramam Parastad, Vidama Devam Bhuvanesham Idam. Natashakar, and you're probably more familiar with these ones. Natashakaryam Karanam Chivijate, Natat Samas Cha Yadi Bikas Chadrishyati, Padasya Saktir Vividhai Vishruyate, Swabhavika Jnana Balakriyachada. Translation is, Supreme Lord is the controller of all other controllers. He is the greatest of all the diverse planetary leaders. Everyone is under his control. All entities are delegated with particular power only by the Supreme Lord. So anybody could do anything. Anybody who's got any kind of a talent, ability, it's all being given to him by Krishna. They are not the Supreme themselves. He is also worshipable by all demigods and is the Supreme Director of all directors. Therefore, he is transcendental to all kinds of material leaders and controllers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Therefore, he's no one is greater than him. He is the cause, supreme cause of all causes. Goes on to say, does not possess a bodily form like that of an ordinary living entity. There is no difference between his body and his soul. He is absolute. So he's Satchidananda Vigraha. He's got a completely spiritual body. All his senses are transcendental. Any one of his senses can perform the action of any other sense. That sound familiar to anybody? That's it. We chant that every morning. That's one of the two Brahma Samhita verses that we chant. All his senses can perform the action of any other sense. That's pretty neat, isn't it? if you think about that. Therefore, no one is greater than him, equal to him. His potencies are multifarious, and thus his deeds are automatically performed as a natural sequence. Prabhupada expresses that in another way in the chapter 9, text 5, in the purport of the Bhagavad Gita. He says, his determination itself is actual fact. That's it. Krishna just has to be, while he's kind of sitting there, wherever he's doing, whatever position he's in, enjoying, he just has to think, yeah, it'd be cool if this was happening. And then that's it. It happens. His determination is itself actual fact. That's, some insight into the position of Krishna. Okay, so getting back to the purport here. All of them are Vishnu tattvas or non-different from the personalities of Godhead. The incarnation of Sri Ram and all these different expansions appeared for particular pastimes of the Lord. Lord Ram is the original Vasudeva, and his brothers were Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. So just out of curiosity, does anybody know which brothers correspond to which expansions? Did I really? What did I say? I don't even remember. Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughna were Sankarshan, and Bharat was Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, Shatrughna was Aniruddha. Okay, wow. So, Aniruddha, and then that's it. We're finished with that thought. So that's pretty interesting. Aniruddha is also the cause of Mahavishnu, from whose breathing the Rig Veda appeared. Okay, so that was referring to something that was said in the purport. So that's the way the Rig Veda appeared from Aniruddha, through Mahavishnu, through the breathing of Mahavishnu. And that's pretty far out. All this is nicely explained in the Markandeya Purana. In the incarnation of Lord Krishna, Aniruddha appeared as the son of the Lord. So just this whole thing of incarnations and expansions when you stop and think about it, it's really like an incredible thing. Krishna is expanding as himself, and then he's interacting with himself. So that, there's a sense in which that all these expansions are, they're identical with Krishna, but there's a sense in which they're completely different people, because Krishna has relationships with them. Aniruddha, when Krishna saw Aniruddha in the past times at Dwarka, he didn't go, hello, me. He was, right? It wasn't like he was thinking, okay, there's me. No, he's thinking, there's my son. And he's doing it's a whole rasa. There's a whole thing going on between Krishna and these expansions. You know the expression role playing? Well, if anybody, Krishna's a supreme role player. And that's where it comes from. Krishna likes to role play. This whole existence is like Krishna role playing. He's expanding as all these identities, Vishnu Tattva expansions, and he's role playing with them perfectly, because they're him. So he's kind of total. They're fully independent, but they're not at all independent because they're Krishna. So anyway, he role plays with his own Vishnu Tattva expansions, and then he also expands his Shakti Tattva, which is, what exactly is Shakti Tattva? That's, okay, what exactly is Shakti Tattva? The Jiva Tattva is us, the Jivas. Shakti Tattva, is Radharani considered Shakti Tattva? Okay, now I got it. Yeah, I just want to make sure I got my terminology correct. Yeah, so like Radharani and Lakshmi's, and Lakshmi's an expansion of Radharani and like that, and they're all Shakti Tattva. So that's also, ultimately Krishna, it's his energy, it's expanding. And they're interacting with Krishna in different ways for his pleasure once again. And then there's the Jivas, the Jiva Tattva, that's us. And it's kind of like Jiva Tattva is an opportunity, because Jiva Tattva has a little bit of independence. So we can, you never hear, I've never heard of a Vishnu Tattva expansion deciding that he didn't want to participate in Krishna's pastimes. It just doesn't happen, right? I think constitutionally it can't happen. There's no question of a Jiva Tattva misusing their independence. A Vishnu Tattva misusing their independence. It's like, no, it's like, it doesn't happen. It can't happen. But a Jiva Tattva can. So Jiva Tattva is like, sometimes they're referred to as marginal potency. We're in a position where we can just choose to cooperate and, be in harmony and compliance and et cetera with the will of the Supreme Lord, or not. I say. So that's, but anyway, it's an interesting sort of a situation, but Krishna knows what he's doing, and he's created that, he's arranged that. I guess, I don't know if it's not really, in one sense it's not really correct to say created because we're eternal, but anyway, that's the arrangement, and it's perfect, somehow or another. Because everybody goes, well, wait a second, but he gave us this free will, and so many living jivas misuse the free will, and here's the material world, and people, didn't Krishna make a mistake because there's so much suffering, so many living entities are suffering? No. It's kind of inconceivable for us to understand how it's not a mistake, but it's not. Maybe I might come back to that, but I want to say other things first. So, so there's all these different expansions of Krishna, and then it goes on to say, Lord Krishna appeared as the son. Aniruddha appeared as the son of the Lord. Lord Krishna in Dwarka is the Vasudeva expansion of the original group. So the Krishna who's in Dwarka is not the original Krishna. It's Vasudeva. Because Prabhupada goes on to say in the next sentence, the original Lord Krishna never leaves Goloka Vrindavan. never leaves Goloka Vrindavan. So, okay. All the plenary expansions are one and the same Vishnu Tattva, and there's no difference in their potency. So these last two sentences kind of remind me of something I've heard Prabhupada, a point I've heard Prabhupada bring up in lectures, that it's good to try to understand Krishna. This is good, what we're doing, to try to understand the tattvas and the intricacies of Krishna's energies and, how he's expanding, what they are, how they're operating, and et cetera, et cetera. But then sometimes Prabhupada would say, but, at some point, devotees don't worry. They don't concern themselves too much with that. They're concerned with it, but they kind of go beyond it, and they basically, at some point, they just go, you know what? I think I should make my primary program just trying to increase my love for Krishna, develop more affection for Krishna. And Prabhupada would describe on those occasions when he would bring up that point, that's the situation of the residents of Vrindavan. The residents of Vrindavan, they're not concerned. They're not really, they already kind of got it under their belt, so to speak, but they're really not consciously concerned about how great Krishna is, and trying to understand the opulence of Krishna, or in reverence. No. I'll read you something from, there's an excerpt from a lecture I heard recently, which pretty nicely touches upon this point. So Prabhupada's giving a lecture, and somebody, a devotee, says a woman devotee, she said, why do you say that Jesus Christ performed so many miracles? And then she goes on to say, but you never say Krishna performed any miracles. When Krishna lifted up Govardhan Hill, nobody said that was a miracle. But when Jesus made so much food, they say it's a miracle. Why is that? So Prabhupada goes, the difference is that in Vrindavan, they are pure devotees. They knew that, this is not a miracle for Krishna. Krishna can do anything and everything. So they were not surprised. If I lift one mountain, you will be surprised, because you know that Swamiji is a man, how he is lifting. But they know that Krishna is all-powerful, Prabhupada chuckles, it says. So there was no surprise. It was just like natural work. There was so much affectionate to Krishna. This is the theme. This is the real theme of the whole thing. There was so much affectionate to Krishna. He was not only lifting every day, he was doing so much great performances. And his boyfriends, they will come home and they will narrate the story to their mothers. Oh, mother, today Krishna performed like this. There was a great demon and he killed him immediately. And the mothers will say, oh, Krishna did that? He is a very nice boy, very nice. Prabhupada laughs again. Because they were so affectionate to Krishna, they always think everything is possible for Krishna. Krishna is so nice. Krishna is so great. That is their idea. So that is not miracle. That is ordinary thing for Krishna, just like Yasoda. Krishna's friends complain. Mother Yasoda, see, what's more important to them is not that how great Krishna is, but how much they love Krishna, their affection for Krishna. Mother Yasoda, the boys are complaining, Krishna has eaten earth. You gave him sweet meat, but he was not eating sweet meat. And Prabhupada goes, the boys, they complain each other, again, make friends, like that. So Prabhupada goes, Yasoda was, oh, Krishna, I gave you sweetmeats. You are eating earth? No, mother, I have not eaten. They are telling false. Prabhupada goes, and they were still. The boys, you can imagine, you have to visualize the scene. There's, Mother Yasoda, there's Krishna and the boys. They're all there simultaneously. So then Prabhupada goes, and they were still, meaning the boys, yes, we have seen, mother, he has eaten. They're right there, and Krishna's saying, no, I didn't eat. And his friends are going, no, you eaten. They're telling his mother, no, he ate it. And his mother goes, his mother asked him, well, show your face. Open your mouth. I want to see. So Prabhupada goes, so he opened his mouth, and she saw all the universe within his mouth, not only earth, the whole planets, sun, moon, and everything within his mouth. Then she thought, what have I seen? Now what's coming up is really the important, significant point. What did she do? Did she, what I might do or what somebody might do, you think would be, whoa, I didn't realize who I was dealing with here. And obeisances, pranams, dandabats, and, oh, Krishna, please forgive me, blah, blah, blah. No one reverence, She didn't have that response at all. This is her response. She's questioning what I have seen. And then her response, all right, don't do it. don't do it again. Prabhupada laughs. She's not at all surprised. She thought that I saw something. Maybe I was right or wrong. And she's questioning, do I really even, is that really Krishna that's showing me that? And she's even questioning the vision. Prabhupada literally says, let me say, I saw something. Maybe I wrong or right. She's not sure what that vision meant, She's not prepared to jump to the conclusion that, wow, Krishna's some incredibly great personality. No. Anyway, she goes, don't do it, that's all. So Prabhupada, and there was so much affection to Krishna that Krishna's this jugglery could not enchant them. Prabhupada chuckles again. He says, therefore, Krishna said to the gopis that, your love is so pure that it is not possible for me to repay. What's the connection there? It's just beyond. The dealings of these devotees is just way beyond awe and reverence. And I guess that's what's being expressed here, and Krishna really appreciates it when devotees are able to come to that level. Does anybody know that verse about Krita Punja Punja? Does anybody know that one? How the cowherd boys, maybe somebody could look it up while I'm speaking, about how the cowherd boys, they performed heaps of pious activities, and now, because of that, they're playing with Krishna so the position of these devotees is just like so far beyond just awe and reverence. Anyway, so Krishna really likes it, and he feels that it's impossible for him to repay. Shivaram wrote a book, Na Pare. Does anybody know the title of that book? Yeah, it's kind of like it's a famous. Oh, you got that up there? Yeah. So what's the translation there? Wow, it's a big, long one. Okay, let's leave it for the time being. But, so it goes on. Krishna is declaring insolvent, means he can't, to pay their debt. He feels like there's nothing I can do to repay the love that you're expressing for me. You be satisfied with your love only. I cannot repay. Prabhupada concludes, that is the position of Krishna. Krishna and the residents of Vrindavan so affectionately connected that there is no such conception that Krishna is God. Krishna can play wonderful things. There's not even a conception that Krishna is God. They simply love Krishna. And out of love, they forget everything. And it's eclipsed. They have so much love for Krishna that their understanding of the opulence of Krishna, all feelings of awe and reverence, it's just completely eclipsed by this natural, spontaneous affection and love they have for Krishna. Prabhupada goes, all right, that's all. It says, so that ecstasy of love is only possible in Vrindavan by devotees, and Vrindavan means, of course, not a physical place, but devotees who have that elevated kind of level of Krishna consciousness. Right, so here's another thought I was having. So this is relating to, so of course, we want to develop that. We want to come to that stage, ideally, of loving Krishna like that. It's something that's, what to speak of, Dharma, Artha, Karma, Moksha, right? Lord Chaitanya said there's Dharma, Artha, Karma, Moksha. And beyond that, there's, beyond moksha, even liberation, there's prema pumartha mahan, there's love for Krishna. And then there's even different, apparently, levels of love for Krishna. And this is where Vidura's he's inquiring he knows everything already. He's already kind of on that level. But this is a pastime. It's for our benefit. He's inquiring from Uddhava. It's being recorded by Vyasadeva, and so we can, it's like a window. Prabhupada said the pictures are the windows to the spiritual world. Well, the whole Bhagavatam is like windows to pure love for Krishna. So we're getting a chance to kind of look in the window, so to speak, and appreciate what love of Krishna is by hearing the interaction between these devotees who are on this very elevated, exalted platform already, even though they might be sometimes not pretending, but posing themselves as otherwise. They're there, right? So that's there. So I guess we have to think, well, how are we going to get there, right? And of course, the basic program is there, as that we've been given, and that is valid. Chant 16 rounds, follow the four good. Well, chant 16 rounds, trying to avoid the 10 offenses. Actually, in other temples, a lot of other temples, they chant the 10 offenses every morning. I'm not trying to tell you guys that you criticize or even tell you how to do your program or anything. But I think I actually remember hearing that Prabhupada, an instruction where Prabhupada said that devotees should chant the 10 offenses every morning. Because it's kind of good to remember, you got to be conscious of them in order to be thinking how to avoid them. So chanting 16 rounds, avoiding the 10 offenses, regular principles, of course, and the morning Mangalarti, et cetera, just exactly what we're doing here. And then, but doing that always in the consciousness that my goal is to reawaken my dormant love for Krishna. There's that, in the Nectar of Instruction, there's that one niyamagraha. We shouldn't just be doing something without, we should be doing it conscious that I'm doing this, I want to reawaken my dormant love for Krishna. That's why, so, when you're conscious of that, when you have that in the forefront of your mind, you're going to do, you're already kind of doing very well here, but you'll do it in a certain way as to try to maximize your, getting that desired result. Like, for instance, I have to tell you that, practically your kirtans here are the best I've experienced. Kirtans here are really great. You guys got it. You got the idea. You don't just mechanically come and just do a kirtan. You're really into it. And I don't know if it started off artificially, but now it seems like it's really enthusiastic. It's really it's great to see, I think the way you do kirtan here, well, particularly Mangalarti, that's the way it's supposed to be done. Really enthusiastically getting into it. And it seems like devotees are really kind of getting getting some sort of a taste as a result of doing that. So that's really wonderful. So, yeah, we have to be conscious of that's what we're that's what we want to achieve. That, there's that verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sabu Kabanaya Shravana de Sude Chitte Koyodai, that pure love for Krishna is lying dormant within the heart of every living entity, and it has to be awakened by the process of hearing and chanting. It has to be awakened so it's not something you got to get from outside, it's there. It's there. We just have to awaken it by the process of hearing and chanting. And of course, that ideally, and that hearing and chanting has to be done free from offenses, because that'll be more effective in awakening the dormant love for Krishna. But that's what we're going for. And let me read you another excerpt from a lecture here. This is an excerpt from a lecture Prabhupada gave in New Vrindavan, 1969. It just really, I heard it, and just a few sentences caught me. Prabhupada goes, enjoyment is the goal of everyone's life. But the difference is that the materialist is trying to hanker after flickering enjoyment. And the transcendentalists, they are hankering after spiritual enjoyment or eternal enjoyment. And he quotes, Anandamaya Vyasat, because enjoyment is our life. See? So my understanding of that is that you're going to be after enjoyment. That's the nature of the living entity. Anandamaya Vyasat. We're hankering after pleasure or enjoyment. So we just have to make a choice. What enjoyment, at least that's what I'm hearing here, when I'm understanding that Prabhupada's saying, make your choice. Do you want to hanker after flickering material enjoyment, or do you want to hanker after eternal spiritual enjoyment? You're going to hanker, because that's our position, that's our nature, to want the enjoyment. I guess maybe why it struck me, because when I heard it, I thought, that's exactly, there's the expression, if the shoe fits, wear it, right? So when I heard that, I felt, this is spot on. This is my whole life. I'm just always thinking about how I'm going to be happier, I mean, when I get up in the morning, I'm not worrying about you or you or you. I apologize. It might sound selfish, but I'm immediately thinking about how am I doing? How do I feel? How am I doing? I'm not doing it on purpose. It's just automatic. I can't help it. I think that's just the way everybody's psyche is constituted, that we're just hankering after pleasure. We're after enjoyment. But the point is being made here. Okay, that's nothing. That's it. That's bona fide. Prabhupada's saying here, enjoyment is the goal of everyone's life. That's natural. But what enjoyment we're going to go for? See, so those of us who are here, we've heard this philosophy and we've made the choice. We've made the decision. Yeah, I'm going to take Prabhupada's word for it. I'm going to go after the spiritual enjoyment, the eternal enjoyment. I believe this, what I'm hearing from Prabhupada, that there is a spiritual enjoyment, an eternal enjoyment, and which is much, much far beyond, much greater, far surpasses the flickering enjoyment of material sense pleasure. I'm going to go for that. So that's our program. That's what we're all about. Those of us who are here, those who are trying to be devotees in the Krishna conscious movement, we want this spiritual or eternal enjoyment, and we have a program, the basic program, and in addition to that, we should each have like an individual. It's not really individual, but we should be so conscious and so acutely like focused on this that in addition to, above and beyond the basic program, each one of us should have like our bhajan, our internally we should be striving for more internal absorption. We shouldn't just officially, mechanically do the program, which is good to do it. It's good, even if you officially and mechanically do it, that's good. But that's just like a springboard, and beyond the basic program, we should, the very next second that the program's over, we should be thinking, okay, now how am I going to stay absorbed or get more absorbed? Like you watch advanced devotees like, well, does anybody know Dravida here? Okay, yeah, amazing. We go through a whole program. We're chanting 16 rounds. We hear the Bhagavatam class, etc. As soon as the class is over, you get Dravida. What does he do? He just stands up, goes in front of the deity, and he starts rattling off a string of verses that he's memorized from the, I don't know where. He's got memorized so many verses. I don't know. I don't even recognize him. But probably he's chanting something from something in the 10th canto where pastimes of Krishna with the gopis or something like that. He's just like. He doesn't go, well, yeah, I did the program, so now I could just, whatever. There's one anecdote where Prabhupada goes, he chants 16 rounds, and then some devotee was with him, and after he finished the 16 rounds, he said, well, now I've chanted my 16 rounds, and he took his bead bag and he now I could do anything I damn well please. No, he was being sarcastic. The idea being that, no, that shouldn't be that shouldn't be our mentality, that, okay, I finished this regulative principles, I finished what I'm supposed to do, what I'm required to do by law, I've done that, so now, whatever, I want. No, the correct mood is like what Dravida was doing, finish the routine work. Prabhupada would refer to it as routine work, the chanting and going to the artiques and kirtan in class, but then as soon as he's done with that, then he's rattling off one Sanskrit verse after another, and he's standing in front of the deities like this, and suddenly he knows what he's chanting. He knows what they mean and everything. It's like prayer. He's offering prayers, that he's memorized like that. So that's a very advanced stage. I mean, I think he's just pretending to be like an ordinary person. I can't imagine what it's like to be that absorbed in Krishna consciousness. There are other devotees that I don't know if anybody's on that level. There might be, but there are other devotees who, they've really learned a lot of shlokas. And there's one devotee in New Vrindavan, maybe Ananda Vijay. Does anybody know him? I was with Ananda Vijay. The way he distributes Bhagavad Gitas on the Warp Tour, what he was doing, at that point this was like 2011, 12, 13, maybe the beginning, I can't remember, maybe it was 12, 13, 14, but he'd already had the entire Bhagavad Gita memorized. So the way he used to distribute Bhagavad Gita, he used to hand the person he was talking to the Bhagavad Gita, he'd say, hey, this is really a great book, it's an incredible book. To be honest with you, this book is so far out, I was so inspired by this book, I memorized the whole thing. He said, and he'd hand him the book and he'd say, here, you pick a shloka here, there's 18 chapters and there's so many verses, you just pick any of them and you tell me and I'll recite it for you. And So they'd open up the book, and they figured out what the chapter and shloka thing was, and they'd say, okay, well, this one. And he'd go, and he just, he'd say the Sanskrit and say the translation. And they'd go, wow. And, you know the whole book, huh? And they go, yeah. And they were so impressed that here's somebody, this book had such an impact on this person's life that he memorized the whole thing. They take the book. He used to distribute Bhagavad Gitas like that. And aside from just the Bhagavad Gita, one time I questioned him because I was kind of intrigued or fascinated by how much he knew. And he knew, he'd memorized about the first 15, 16 chapters in the Bhagavatam. And of course, Brahma Samhita, Nectar of Instruction, I don't know, I can't remember what else he told me. But, when he led up the Warped Tour for about 10 years. He was kind of like the person who's leading the party. And when he was driving from one place to the other, he did traveling Sankirtan for 10 years. That's what he would do when he was driving. He'd just be memorizing verses. Amazing. And there's other devotees in that category. I mean, there are other... Now, for those of you who are not in that category, I'm not in that category. I'm nowhere near that category. I'll just mention a couple of the names. You know that devotee, he used to be called Mahamantra? What's his name now? He's a sannyasi. Bhakti Bringa Madhava, isn't it? Bhakti Madhurya Madhava. Anyway, we have a godbrother, Mother Kamalini and I don't know where the poor of it went, but his name used to be Mahamantra. He's a sannyasi now. And I remember once I was walking with him in Vrindavan, and we were just walking along the road, and he was just chanting one devotional song after another. He would memorize 1, 2, or 3 Sanskrit verses a day. It's really amazing when you're with these devotees and you actually kind of they reveal to you their what their internal absorptions. I had another friend who's a brahmachari, Gopinath Acharya. We used back in in Australia. At one point we had a program there called Contract Sales. We were trying to sell sets of books, and it lasted for about 2 or 3 years. Anyway, he was the best at it. He actually sold 400 sets in let's say a year and a half or 2 years. That's pretty good. Back in those days, that was incredible. But he was an amazing person. He was a brahmachari, and he memorized also chapters of the Bhagavatam. And I remember just kind of, we were walking down the street, and he'd just be rattling off the, Bhishmadev's prayers that he chanted when that chapter, Bhishmadev passes away. He knew that whole chapter. He knew the whole chapter, Queen Kunti's prayers. He knew the chapter about the prayers of the Prachetas. And we'd just be walking down the street, and he'd just be rattling off these verses one after the other, It was wow, who is this person? Anyway, there's people like that in this movement. Very advanced. But once again, getting back to for those of you who, know is near on that level, or you feel like I could never be on that level, I don't think I could. I mean, I feel like maybe I had a shot at it when I was a young devotee. I remember I had one interesting experience as a younger devotee. This was in the Brooklyn Temple. Am I talking too much? Okay, we got a little time. I was in Henry Street at the time, and the situation was that devotees went to the Mayapur festival. So, devotees, Harikesh? He's not doing the greatest, maybe at the moment, I don't know. But he was, had a lot of association with Prabhupada. So he stayed back, and he was in charge of the temple. And he was, but he was a cook as well. He liked cooking. So he would manage the temple from the kitchen, basically. He was always down there cooking something or other, and during that 3-month period when everybody was away. So I remember one day, everybody else was gone. I went out on Sankirtan, and I came back, and he said, how you doing? I said, well, I said, not very good. And he said, why? What's up? I said, well, I just don't feel I'm absorbed. And he said, I can't, how did it go? Maybe he questioned me. Oh, yeah, I said, I don't feel very enlivened. And he said, why? He said, well, because you're not absorbed, that's why. I said, what do you mean I'm not absorbed? I'm going out, I'm doing my service, and, how could you say I'm not absorbed? He said, well, because you obviously your mind is not absorbed in Krishna. So I said, well, okay, how do I get absorbed in Krishna? And he said, well, come on. And he took me into the kitchen, his little office. Mother Kamalini might remember, it's like a little office off the kitchen there. So he took me and says, look, I'm going to give you 13 verses. And I want you to memorize these verses. They're from the Bhagavad Gita. And when you got them memorized, come back to me, and I'm going to teach you how to use them in preaching. So he gave me a list of 13 verses. And so I took it seriously, and I went off, and maybe like a day later, I came back. Just maybe at most 3 days, but I don't even think it was that long. I came back, I had them memorized, and I, recited them to him, and he was very pleased, and he told me, okay, this is how you use this verse, this is, Prabhupada, use this verse like this, and he said, okay, so now I want you to memorize, told me to memorize the 9th chapter. He said, now memorize the whole 9th chapter. I said, the whole 9th chapter? He said, yeah, come on, you can do it. So, okay. So I went off, and, I think, I felt like I got some special mercy from him or something, because, I got into it, and within a few days I went back and I recited the 9th chapter to him, and he was really happy, and he gave me some additional information, his instructions, and then he said, okay, now memorize the 7th chapter, and I did that, and I was going, wow, and the thing was, is this really valuable, because, I don't do it anymore. I should, but I'm not. But I remember when I was on Radha Damodar, if it was like I was in a parking lot and it was slow, I used to kind of start rattling off those verses. Not the first 13. I can't even remember what they were now. But I would memorize the chapters that I had memorized. I went on to learn 2 and 3 as well. So I knew 7, 9, 2, and 3. And I would just, in a parking lot, if it was slow, I'd just start reciting the verses one after the other. Sanskrit, mostly just the Sanskrit. I didn't bother with the English. But, you get absorbed like that. I remember one experience I had. I was in the temple in, by this point, the temple had moved to Brooklyn, from Brooklyn to Manhattan. And it was the marathon. And I was on part of a party, like a van party. There's the van leader and 2 or 3 others. And we used to go out of the city, because in the city was kind of tough, in New York City. So we drive out of the city to some shopping center to do Sankirtan there. And that particular morning, I slept in. So I was late for breakfast, and the van left without me. And anyway, so the Sankirtan leader just said, okay, well, you got to just go downtown. It was the marathon. So I said, where? He said, well, it's up to you, you kind of blew it. So I just went down to 8th Avenue and something. I can't even remember where. 6th Avenue in some place. And it was, it wasn't a good spot. I just went someplace. And it was cold, because it was the winter. It's December, in New York. And that particular day it was cold. It was drizzling. And, despite the fact that I kind of slept in and missed breakfast, I was still tired. I was still hungry. Shauna was gone by then. So there I was, it's kind of one of the early first days of the marathon. I can't remember if it was the very first day or whatever. But I was there, and I was kind of like in anxiety. I was cold. I was hungry. I was sleepy. And I was totally in anxiety, because I realized I'm not in a good spot. This is not a good spot. I'm not going to, how can I have a good day here, And I was just freaking out. I just felt like, But I didn't really know what to do. But, as I said, back in those days, it was like quite a common thing for devotees who are to take the devotional service very seriously. So there's no question of just kind of like just going someplace and sitting down. I mean, I had to do something. I didn't know what to do. So I just started chanting the verses. I started with the 2nd chapter. Tams tata kripaya vishtam ashru pornakalekshadam visidam tamidam vacham vach. I just started, going through the 2nd chapter, 3rd. Anyway, it didn't even take very long. Within just a few verses into the 2nd chapter, I immediately started feeling, the anxiety started kind of going away, and I started feeling kind of peaceful and okay. And then I kept chanting, and then as I went on, I just started getting like absorbed in the verses. I started getting into it, feeling like, okay, this is a good program, I'll do this. And then within literally less than 5 minutes, I was feeling like I was getting a taste. I was chanting these verses, and I felt, internally absorbed. I was relishing the transcendental sound vibration as I was chanting the verses while I was standing out there, cold, getting wet, tired, hungry, like that. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this Krishna consciousness is really transcendental. Because here I am, I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm tired, and I was in anxiety because, I was in a place where I couldn't do what I'm supposed to do, but I'm happy. I'm feeling blissful because I'm absorbing myself in Krishna Katha, chanting these Bhagavad Gita verses. So it's a very powerful program. So actually, I guess the purport of this is that most of you are young, and you're kind of like still at a point in your life where you can learn. That expression, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. There's something to that. I mean, when you get onto the transcendental platform, none of these cliches apply, but there is a certain amount of validity to that. It's harder. I mean, just like, look at kids, the way they can pick up languages. Kids who are 3, 4, 5 years old, if you teach them languages, they're just like a sponge, they can learn as much as you try to teach them, they'll learn it. So still, when you're younger, and you're brahmachari, you can still learn. So it's a good idea to it's a good program. My only advice or suggestion to everybody is don't push yourself too hard. That was the mistake I made. I was into it at one point. I got into it so much, I actually worked out some sort of technique to memorize verses. I would just, I found if I could just remember the first letter of a word, I could remember the word, and if I could remember the word, and I was making like codes. I was codifying the verses, and if I could remember the code, I had a code that helped me remember another code, and if I could remember that code, then I could remember the verse. And I was kind of like trying to memorize verses while I was chanting, the classes were going on, while I was chanting. I just pushed my mind so much that at some point I just went, no, I can't do it. And I just stopped altogether. It's like, don't do things in the strain zone. You're supposed to do things with this. I learned this from Parameshwar. There's 3 zones. I think I don't know if it's his creation or if he got it from someplace, but there's the comfort zone, the stretch zone, and the strain zone. So when you do things in the comfort zone, you're comfortable, but you don't make any progress. If you do things in the strain zone, you make progress. I learned a lot of verses, and I was kind of making but because it was in the strain zone, it was so stressful that I abandoned it. At some point, I just said, no, I ain't doing it at all, and I stopped. But if you do it in the stretch zone, you make progress, not as rapidly, say, as you're in the strain zone, but you can sustain it. That's what you want to do. That's kind of mode of goodness. That's the way to go about things. Do things in the stretch zone. Everything, not just memorizing verses. If you want to cut down on your eating, or you want to cut down on your sleeping, or whatever, do it in the stretch zone. Don't do it like abruptly, because then you're running the risk of burning yourself out, and you're going to do like the pendulum. That Prabhupada gives that example. You just go from one extreme to the other. The stretch zone. Slowly but surely wins the race. The story of the tortoise and was it tortoise? So slowly but surely wins the race, and that's true. Just imagine if I didn't push myself if I just learned, say, 1 verse a week. Okay, so 1 verse a week is 50 verses in a year, rounded off, times 50. 50 times 50, what's that? 2,500, right? So if I learned 1 verse a week from the time I joined, I'd know 2,500 verses by now. I don't. No, I know maybe 10% of that. You see, so you could just see the wisdom of that approach. Is there anybody who feels they can't learn 1 verse a week? Nobody's raising their hand. That means everybody feels they could learn 1 verse a week. It's doable, right? So if you just learn 1 verse a week, that's 250. It's 50 in a year, and over like 50 years, that's 2,500 verses. That's a lot of verses to know. So it's a good, do it in the stretch zone. So what else did I want? Oh yeah, and this is something, but for those of you who are kind of like, not hearing this and feeling maybe overwhelmed that, maybe, other devotees could do this, I can't do it, I don't think I could memorize any verses, or I don't think, I just can't see myself being on that level. Here's something, and this is practical. This is where I'm at, but I'm taking shelter of this, and it's still giving me hope. I shared it with everybody the other day. That thing from the Anshalila. I was just further analyzing this thing I'm meditating on, where Prabhupada says, nevertheless, if we adhere to the lotus feet of the 6 Goswamis and pray for their mercy, all impediments will be annihilated, and the transcendental devotional desire to serve the Supreme Lord will be fulfilled. So I was meditating on that phrase, the transcendental devotional desire to serve the Supreme Lord will be fulfilled. And I was thinking to myself, what does that mean anyway? What? And it just, at least this morning, it occurred to me, it's like Prabhupada saying that you'll reawaken your dormant love for God. Does that make sense? But Prabhupada's saying here, if you adhere to the lotus feet of the six Goswamis and pray for their mercy, all impediments will be annihilated, and by that process, the transcendental devotional desire to serve the Supreme will be filled. It's just another way of saying you'll reawaken your dormant love for God. See? So in other words, his hope, because anybody could do that. How difficult? That's not difficult. So I'm doing that. I'm taking the easiest process, because I just feel like I don't know if I could do anything beyond that. But I'm feeling hopeful that even just by doing that, just by following the basic stuff and praying to the six Goswamis on the instruction of Srila Prabhupada, I'm not like, I'm not thinking like I'm jumping over Prabhupada, now I'm taking shelter of the six, no. It's Prabhupada's instruction. He's instructing that, so I'm going to try to follow that instruction, and in hopes that just by doing that, I will reawaken my dormant love for God, which is, of course, that's our goal. That's what we want. Okay, so now a little bit more about Aniruddha. I just realized there's a verse in the 4th canto, in the chapter called Chanting the Song Sung by Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva's, most of you might know the story of Lord Shiva. Somehow or another, Prachetas, they met Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva was pleased because they knew they were devotees of Krishna. So he kind of agreed that he would chant a prayer, and he told them, listen very attentively, because just by listening attentively to this prayer, you'll benefit spiritually very greatly. So anyway, one of the prayers there, it goes, Lord Shiva's praying, it goes, Namo Namo Narudhaya Rishikesh Endriyatmane Nama Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nibratatmane. And the translation for that, I actually, to be honest with you, I chant this prayer every morning. It's one of the prayers I chant when the sun rises. Prabhupada said that in the 5th canto, in the purport, Prabhupada said every living entity, he said, should chant this prayer or another prayer just as the sun rises. One of them was the Jaya Sada Sevachamandala Majjavarti. That's from the Rig Veda, but I think it was that or the one from the Brahma Samhita. What? The Rig Veda one. That's the one. He said every living entity should take shelter of the sun god by chanting this mantra just as the sun rises. And then in another purport, I believe he says you could chant that one or the one from the Brahma Samhita. How's that go? Yash Chakshuresha Savita Sakala Grahanam. So anyway, I kind of elaborated upon that, and I chant some other mantras as well. This is one of the ones I chant. I just chanted the Sanskrit for you. This is the translation. And I'll read it because it's a lot about Aniruddha here. It says, My Lord, as the supreme directing deity known as Aniruddha, you are the master of the senses and the mind. What we heard in today's verse that he created the mind. So he's the master of the senses and the mind. Well, that makes sense. He created, he's the master of it. Goes on to say, I therefore offer my obeisances unto you again and again. This is Lord Shiva speaking. He says, you are known as Ananta as well as Sankarshan because of your ability to destroy the whole creation by the blazing fire from your mouth. So here in the purport, Prabhupada says, it's a lot about Aniruddha in here, so I'll read it. Rishikesh Endriyatmane. The mind is the director of the senses, and Lord Aniruddha is the director of the mind. Well, he's the creator of the mind, so once again, it makes sense that he's the director of the mind. He's the director of the mind. In order to execute devotional service, one has to fix his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. Therefore, Lord Shiva prays to the controller of the mind, Lord Aniruddha, to be pleased to help him engage his mind on the lotus feet of the Lord. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita 9:34. Everybody know that verse? Yeah, everybody should know that verse. Manmana bhavamad bhakto madjaji mam namaskaru mamivashasi sacham te prachijane. I think that's one of the most quoted shlokas. I mean, if you go onto the if you go onto Google and you type in most quoted shlokas or verses by Srila Prabhupada, there's a list. You'll actually find Satsrup years ago. Maharaj composed a list, and he does it. It's in order of how often they were quoted. The most, aside from the Hare Krishna mantra, the most quoted verse is Sarvana Mampra Chajam Mame comes. Then I can't remember, but this mostly like some very common Bhagavad Gita verses, and it just goes right down and it tells you how many times Prabhupada quoted him. He actually did like some sort of a comprehensive study. And there's also books that were produced, one by the BBT, selected shlokas of Srila Prabhupada, and also Dhanavir Maharaj published a book years ago called Uttama Shloka. And it's the most quoted verses of Srila Prabhupada, so that's something good to do. Anyway, it goes on. The mind has to be engaged in meditation on the lotus feet of the Lord in order to execute devotional service. It is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Mataks Mritu Jnanam Apohanam Cha, from the Lord come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Thus, if Lord Aniruddha is pleased, he can help the mind engage in the service of the Lord. It is also indicated in this verse that Lord Aniruddha is the sun god by virtue of his expansions. This is interesting. This wasn't mentioned in today's verse, so it's some additional information about Lord Aniruddha. So he's the sun god by virtue of his expansions. Since the predominating deity of the sun is an expansion of Lord Aniruddha, Lord Shiva also prays to the sun god in this verse. And then it goes on to say, next paragraph, Lord Krishna, by his quadruple expansion, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, is the Lord of psychic action, namely thinking, feeling, willing, and acting. Lord Shiva prays to Lord Aniruddha as the sun god, so kind of like a relationship there between the psychic action and the sun god. Anyway, he prays to Lord Aniruddha as the sun god, who is the controlling deity of the external material elements which constitute the construction of the material body. Interesting. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the word Paramahamsa is also another name for the sun god. The sun god is addressed herein as Nibritatmane, which indicates that he always maintains the various planets by manipulating the rainfall. The sun god evaporates water from the seas and oceans and then forms water into clouds and distributes it over the land. When there is sufficient rainfall, grains are produced, and these grains maintain living entities in each and every planet. Interesting, that's the system in each and every planet, according to this statement here, that rains produce grains, and that's the way living entities are maintained in each and every planet. It says the sun god is also addressed here as Purna, or complete, because the rays emanating from the sun have no end. For millions and millions of years, since the creation of this universe, the sun god has been supplying heat and light without diminution. So it's not just the ball of fire in the sky, it's actually like a person, it's high tech. The sun is like about as high tech as you can get. It's a machine, there's a personality there, and he's operating that machine, and without diminution, he's supplying sunshine for millions and, what does Prabhupada say? Millions and millions of years. So it goes on to say, the word Paramahamsa is applied to persons who are completely cleansed. When there is sufficient sunshine, the mind remains clear and transparent. In other words, the sun god helps the mind of the living entity to become situated on the platform of Paramahamsa. That's nice. Thus, Lord Shiva prays to Aniruddha to be kind upon him, so that his mind will always be in the perfect state of cleanliness and will be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Just as fire sterilizes all unclean things, the sun god also keeps everything sterilized, especially dirty things within the mind, thus enabling one to attain elevation to the platform of spiritual understanding. So, Aniruddha, it's about Aniruddha. So, and every time you see the sun, you could remember there's a lot of connection between the sun and Krishna. It's actually, Aniruddha is the sun god, In that verse that from the Rig Veda, Dhyaya Sada Savachamandala, it says that the translation for that is that Narayan is sitting on a lotus flower in the middle of the sun, and it describes, what he's dressed like and what he looks like and everything. So, and that Narayan is an expansion of Aniruddha, because we heard that the sun god is an expansion of Aniruddha. So there's a lot of connections. It's actually ultimately everything's spiritual, but Prabhupada's given us like the little clues here and there about how to be thinking like that. Okay, so I'll stop there. Does anybody have any question or comment? Yeah, Mitravan, Prabhu.
He told me, like back in the 80s when he was working on
Yeah, he didn't take it
Which
anymore.
is like, how are some people able to like, sustain that, which is like, for some people it's just completely like, like a burnout program basically.
Well, practice for sure. I mean, I think as you do something, and when you can pull it off, you kind of, it gives you confidence, and it's incremental. I don't think overnight he got to that stage. I think he just kind of worked up to that. I don't know. I have to think about that for a while. It's an important question, and I don't want to just kind of give a stupid answer off the top of my head. But yeah, it's definitely something to think about. It's because we all want to get to those higher levels. Maybe we should ask those devotees what their secret was for being able to, to get there. It's certainly very impressive. Anybody have any insights into that? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Hare Krishna. Well, thinking of like the exact like words that he's using, if we're like thinking of like stretching like a muscle or something,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the strain zone for somebody who doesn't stretch every day would be like, like hardly anything, but like a yoga master who's like stretching all the time, their strain zone is like way beyond like somebody. And so I think what you're saying about like practice is like a really, really important thing, even practically speaking with like a muscle, for instance.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that analogy, because I think that's a good analogy. I used to do a lot of walking Prabhupada walked. He did a morning walk. Everyone knows that story. I won't repeat it. He did that. He got 2 massages a day. So Prabhupada did some things for his health. He didn't talk about it, but he did it. So I used to, for years, I'd walk, and I used to like to walk up and down hills. But somehow or another, over the last year, my schedule wasn't allowing it or something. Oh yeah, my Sankirtan partner became a little bit demanding, and he wanted to stay out a minimum of 5 hours every day. So it kind of threw off my schedule of being able to walk in the morning, or I was doing it on the weekends for a while. Anyway, so now I'm doing a bunch of stretching. But so I looked up on the internet. I wanted to make sure I was doing it properly. So I Googled, about how to stretch properly, correct way to stretch. And I found this one website that really gave a couple good pointers. One is, it said stretching is not a warm-up. And it's like somebody, you might tend to think, oh, I'll get up and, no. Stretching is something you do after a workout. And it's like when the muscles are supposed to be warmed up before you stretch. So stretching is not a warm-up, and don't aim for pain was another one I remember. So in the same way, in devotional service, when we're kind of striving to increase our devotional service, we should get up ahead of steam. Don't try to push yourself from 0 to 60 and when you first wake up in the morning. Stretching is not a warm-up. Striving to kind of like intensify your devotional service. Maybe it's a good idea to kind of get a running start. Get into it a bit. And the other one, don't aim for pain. Don't push to the point where it's painful, because then the natural psychology is just a matter of time before you're just going to do like what I did with the verses. I did it unintelligently, and I just, that was too much. So don't aim for pain and stretch. It's not a warm-up. It's just gradually, just you work, you strive, you push, and then you got to know when to back off. Actually, another thing about stretching is, and I've experienced this, and they teach this as well, that you do a stretch, and when you feel like, okay, that's it, then you just hold that position, and you relax and breathe. Then you back off, and then you maybe do the counter stretch, the opposite, and then you come back to it. And when you come back to it the second time, without making any more of an effort, you can stretch more. You could the same thing you couldn't do like a minute ago. All of a sudden, you could just do it. So I don't know why that is. What's the explanation for that? But it works that way. So I think it's the same thing. Prabhupada once said. He said, sometimes I'm writing, sometimes I'm reading, sometimes I'm this, sometimes, and this way I keep my enthusiasm. So, making the point variety. So that's another point, just don't be afraid. Push yourself, but if you're feeling like, okay, it's better much, back off, do something else that's a devotional activity. Something that's really easy to do, and it's really, but at the same time, it's super beneficial, is just listen to a lecture of your spiritual master. Listen to a lecture of Prabhupada. And, that's something you could do lying down on your back. Right? But it's amazing. You could be just totally resting, and at the same time getting spiritually enlivened. I mean, I've had like a lot of times where I just kind of was feeling really wiped, and I just lie down on a mat and just listen to a Prabhupada lecture, and just relax. And then I hear something that's really kind of like, oh, wow, that's pretty far out. And then, you get up and I find it on the transcript and copy and paste it, email it to myself. And, what started out being like a session where I was just feeling like, oh, man, I got to just transform it to something enlivening. So that's something, so the point being, though, just alternate, push and then but have the intelligence to know that, okay, that's my limit today, right now, back off, do some other devotional activity, and then when you return to that, you get a renewed strength and enthusiasm. Anybody else, anything? Yeah, Ram.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So,
Loud, please.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So one thing was I was thinking about one might have the natural tendency, like say like someone likes to cook. If you put someone who doesn't like to cook in the kitchen, it becomes stressful. Even though he can get better at it and become as good as the one who's naturally good at that, he would never be able to have that enjoyment, because for him it's on a different platform. The person that's natural tendency to be in the kitchen and cook, he can create like just wonder, just like that. This other person have to look up recipe and all this stuff. Even though at some point in time he might be able to just do things off without recipe. This is a natural state for that person. So when one is striving for something else, it becomes more of, I guess, like where you're not in your zone, or you're not in that place that you're meant to be. But you could still get as good as that person. So I think Prabhupada had mentioned that, we should work, we should not give up or strive for somebody else's activity. We should actually work according to what our duty is. And you could see some of us are just good in certain things,
Yeah, but, okay, Karen, I don't, go ahead,
Sorry.
finish up, go ahead.
Okay, and that's it.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be your call. It shouldn't be your call. Just like I'll give an example, an analogy from a sport. Okay, say you're a basketball player, and you play, and you're into it, and you're thinking, man, I think I should be a center, but you go to, the coach says, no, I want you as a forward. The coach knows better. You see, you might have a propensity or an attraction to work in a certain way. You could express that, but your spiritual master knows better. So you should be surrendered, and you should be prepared to work according to the way your spiritual master sees that you're best engaged. It's not our call. We shouldn't go, well, I got a propensity for this, so I should be doing that. Yeah, you could present that to your authorities, and if they agree with you, then great, you could do that, But if they disagree and they want you to do something else, be surrendered. Be prepared to just go, well, okay, I don't see how that could be work, but anyway, I'll do it. Be surrendered. Like Maharaj was saying yesterday about, it's a sheath. We have this psychophysiological sheath, but ultimately we're not this. We have nothing to do with it. We're Krishnera and Nityadas. We're eternal servants of Krishna. So even you have no propensity for something, if somebody's fully surrendered, you can just totally transcend your psychophysiological makeup, and when you're on the transcendental platform, you do anything for Krishna. But generally, because sometimes people aren't that surrendered, that's you have to be fully surrendered to be able to do that. There's that verse in the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Mam chayo vyavichadena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatichaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate, that one who engages in full devotional service and doesn't fall down in any circumstance, Krishna says that person that once transcends the three modes of material nature and comes to the platform of Brahman. See? So if you can do that, if you can engage in full devotional service and not fall down in any circumstance, yeah, you can do anything because you'll transcend the three modes of material nature. But if you're something shy of that, well then, out of mercy, the spiritual master will engage that person in what they can see their psychophysiological makeup is, and they'll, gradually they'll advance and they'll progress. But at one point, we want to just be. Anyway, the point is be surrendered. Just be surrendered. Don't worry about the. You could let people know what you think you're best suited to do, but go with what the authorities tell you to do. That's our best bet for making advancement. Probably I should stop there, right? Should I stop? Does anybody have anything they really want to say? Otherwise, I'll just stop. Okay, yeah.
I was just going to make an addition.
Loud, please.
I was going
'cause-
to make an addition to your point that the nature of the living entity is always to be seeking pleasure.
Yeah,
I read this recently, so it came to mind in the Raja Vidya book. In the commentary, Prabhupada writes, all happiness in the material world has a beginning and an end, but happiness in Krishna is unlimited, and there is no end. In order to get this happiness, we simply have to sacrifice a little time and chant Hare Krishna. In former ages, the great sages and demigods used to sacrifice their whole lives for realizing the Supreme, and still they would not attain success. And we've heard that before, but just to hear it again, it's really inspiring that we have to put just such a little sacrifice into Krishna consciousness and we achieve the highest result in life. You know, we see everybody seeking happiness. We know that whatever they like to eat, their gender preference, or their even people who are depressed, may self-harm themselves to seek just a little bit of happiness. So people are doing it in so many gross ways. And someone who comes to Krishna consciousness influenced by ignorance and passion like myself, there will be days when it's not so blissful, and we may try to, the mind may tell us to go seek it elsewhere, but we have to stay committed. Just like he says, just make a little sacrifice and chant Hare Krishna, and give this life to Krishna, and we'll attain that eternal happiness that we're always seeking for. So,
yeah, thank you. Good comment. And so we'll end the class on this note. I'll read you text 7 from the Nectar of Instruction, where Rupa Goswami kind of touches upon the point you made and gives the appropriate instruction. He says, the holy name, character, pastimes, and activities of Krishna are all transcendently sweet like sugar candy. Although the tongue of one afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, ignorance, cannot taste anything sweet, it is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within his tongue, and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root. So we have to have that conviction, that, yeah, this is the right thing, I'm doing the right thing, and I just have to keep doing it. Right now, I'm not tasting anything sweet because my tongue is afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, but if I follow the instruction, like Rupa Goswami says, if I carefully chant these sweet names every day, I'll become cured from that disease, and a natural relish will awaken within my tongue, and that disease will gradually be destroyed at the root. So we just have to, take shelter of that, place our faith in that, and just push on, keep doing it until that we start experiencing that, what Rupa Goswami is describing here. Okay, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.